Welcome, everyone. I'm Ken Crowdy with the Utah Division of Emergency Management, and it's my pleasure to introduce our next workshop presenter for this session of our Be Ready Utah webinar, Conversations on Preparedness by Kathryn McMullin. Kathryn is currently the County Emergency Manager for Summit County. She previously worked as an Emergency Operations Planner for the Utah Division of Emergency Management and served as the lead for the Critical Infrastructure Advisory Board, responsible for producing the disaster discovery framework for the state. I have so much respect for Kathryn and her passion for emergency preparedness. Many of you have seen her before. She's been around the state with her presentations on sanitation and other things. We are so fortunate to have her here with us today. She's a dynamic, energetic, and captivating presenter, so get ready to take lots of notes. At the conclusion of Kathryn's presentation, we will answer the questions you post on your control panel board. Kathryn, take it away.
Well, thanks, Ken. I'm happy to be here today. It's fun to be able to even be back in a virtual presentation and be back doing this expo. So I appreciate everyone that's put this on. Well, today what I wanted to talk to you about is conversations in preparedness. A lot of times when we're talking about our emergency plans and we talk about communications, it's walkie-talkies or ham radios or those types of things. But just as important, and sometimes maybe even more, is actually the conversations you have with your family, the plans that you make before that event. I believe that there are 2 steps for emergency preparedness. Hold on, it's not advancing my screens. Let's see what's happening.
Try clicking on your slide deck.
There we go. Thanks. Is that you, Kathy Holder, the voice from beyond? Thank you so much. So there are technically a few steps to preparedness. The first step is mental preparation, right? And this is just where you simply acknowledge, I believe we're vulnerable. There are some things that can happen to us, right? We could have a pandemic, an earthquake, all of those things. Some people won't even get to mental preparation. You probably have met some of these people that are like, I can't talk about it. It's too scary. They're not ready to mentally prepare. But once they have recognized that we may be vulnerable and we need to make some plans like all of you folks have done, a lot of us jump right into our physical preparations. Now, that's a good thing, right? We go and we get our food storage and we get our emergency packs and we secure our furniture, and that's a good thing. But I believe that the step at once that should happen in between is these conversations and these discussions. Now, if you've missed some of this and you've already done great planning and you've got great stuff, you can go back and do it now, because it's a really important element of your planning. Let me give you an example of this. This is my childhood home, right? Idaho. I had an idyllic childhood. This is my beautiful mother. My parents were very resilient. They were very prepared, right? We were fairly self-reliant, and we had this idyllic little situation, and I was the perfect child. Actually, that's a picture of me right there, so maybe not the perfect child. Let me tell you what happened one day. I'm coming home. I'm a 5-year-old getting off of a school bus, right? Happily trotting home from the school bus. And the disaster that happens is that I get to my home and all the doors are locked and no one is home. No one is there, right? Now, to make matters worse, in my yard, the neighbor's horse and donkey had escaped. I was grazing in the front yard. Now, some of you think that's no big deal. What's the big deal? You know, they're pretty docile. But anybody who's been on a farm or raised on a ranch knows that this is what those animals typically look like. They're terrifying, right? So I'm terrified. I have no idea what to do. Now, would my parents have been able to respond to this? Of course. Common sense would have said, walk across the street, knock on the neighbor's door, tell them you're locked out, whatever that may be. But I was not made aware of that plan, and we had never had that discussion. So I had to do a few things. First of all, I needed a plan. So step 1, I ran screaming around the yard a little bit for a little while. And then I determined I needed an alternate acceptable shelter. I needed someplace to be safe from them, right? So the first thing that I could locate was a metal trash can. So the third step to that plan was that I made as much noise as possible getting into that trash can. And by the time my mother, who was probably a max of 2 minutes late getting to me, by the time she ran home, she was faced with a screaming 5-year-old in a trash can while a donkey and a horse ate trash around her. I know this seems minor. That's not a disaster. It's not an earthquake. But to me as a child, it was a really big event and I had no idea how to respond. We need to involve our families in whatever our plans are to respond. Now, another issue that we have sometimes is when we make our plans involve this event happening when we're all sitting at home together, right? Saturday morning, we're all having cereal and eating cartoons together on the couch, and that earthquake is going to hit at that moment. But honestly, most of the time, that is not the case. And when this event hits, you are going to be in your car on the way to work, on the way to get groceries. Kids are going to maybe be at school or wherever their after school jobs. We're not going to be together. And our priority suddenly will be to get home. It will be a big deal about how to get home. And we need to make some plans in advance because you will be facing significant struggles getting home, depending on the type of environment that the hazard that you face, right? So we need to do some planning. We need to talk to our family before we go and jump and buy and purchase. We talk to our family about what we want to do, what our response is. Now, this is how usually those conversations goes. This is one of my favorites. Typically, we'll have a conversation like this. Push play.
All right, I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay, so who's gonna do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
There we go. So a lot of the times our conversations are not actually that productive. Our plans are not really thought out. That's one of my favorite facetious commercials. However, sometimes we go to the other side, right? Where we get too excited. We're trying to engage our families in our passion for preparedness. And we get a little bit overexcited and we'll do something like this one.
Emergency preparedness drill.
Oh, no, come on.
You know how it works. Once a quarter, keep our readiness up. Now, rise and shine, sleepyhead. Half the town is probably dead.
I have to get a lock for my door.
I think you'll like the drill tonight. I've tried to make it fun. Each of these cards contains a detailed scenario of a possible apocalyptic event. Everything from wildfires to a surprise invasion by Canada. Pick a catastrophe, any catastrophe.
Sheldon, Canada is not going to invade California.
You really? You think those hippies in Washington and Oregon can stop them?
Fine.
All righty. An 8.2 magnitude earthquake devastates Pasadena, reducing mighty edifices to dust, engulfing the city in flames. The streets flow with blood and echo with the cries of the wounded. Oh, excellent choice. Now, put on your hard hat and safety vest.
Oh, fun. I get to spend another night in front of our apartment dressed like one of the village people.
You make that joke every 3 months. I still don't get it. Leonard, wait. What are you doing?
I don't know. What am I doing?
Look around you. There's hypothetical broken glass everywhere. Really? You're going to face Armageddon without your orthotics? I know, your choice. Uh-oh, hypothetical aftershock. And that's why we wear hard hats.
So that's one of my favorites. When you're talking to your family, how do we talk to them? How do we do this where we don't over or get too zealous and cause them to check out? Or how do we have meaningful conversations? And what should those conversations be about? So let's talk about things that we should do right now with your immediate family. First of all, immediately what to do, after the event. And I'm so glad that was really beneficial to hear Jeff's, what happened to him with Japanese earthquake, and Marilyn and John and Wade talking about what do we do during, right? You stop, drop, and cover, you stop, drop, and roll, all of those safety phrases. That's what we do during. Now what? Have you talked to your teenager about once the shaking has stopped and everything has settled down and we've determined that it's safe, now what do you do? You're at work, you're at school. What do you want them to do immediately following that event? Now, I can give you some tips and we can talk about that, but really it's got to be customized per family, because if you're going to go get that child, then that's the plan you need to make with them. If you expect them to make their way home, then that's the plan you're going to make with them. You need to have a customized family. What do we do right after the event? Now, first thing you should set up is an out of area contact, right? We've heard that before. If cell towers are jammed, right? Everyone's now trying to communicate. You need an out of area contact, because often you can get a signal to a phone outside of the area, but if you're trying to call someone within the area, you're going to have an issue. And what should happen is each of your family members that are separated should be calling your contact person to say, I am okay. I'm going to do this. I'm going to follow the plan. I'm going to walk home. I'm going to stay where I'm at. So you need an out of area contact to make sure that you can have that communication. Something also to remember is that often text will work when cell signals won't. They travel on a different bandwidth. They have less bandwidth that they need. So they're going to have a higher likelihood of texting. During the Boston Marathon bombing, or right following that, everyone was trying to check on their marathoners, and you could not get a call to save your life, but they were getting texts. So I want you to set up an out of area contact right away. I then want you to have meeting points outside of your neighborhood. It's good to do fire drills where you figure out where are we going to meet right outside of our home. But I want you to have one that is outside of your neighborhood, so that if you're trying to meet your spouse, your significant other, your family and friends, your children, what if they are trying to get back home and they get to a place where the roads are shut down and your community is not available, your neighborhood is not accessible? Where do we go now? So you're going to set up primary meeting points, secondary meeting points, even tertiary, and make sure that some of them are outside of your immediate neighborhood, your immediate street, and have additional places. Now, another thing I want you to do is set up a message center or area somewhere around your home or nearby, because if you have to leave, if you've been evacuated and someone makes their way to your home, sometimes you need to be able to communicate a message. And if you're struggling with cell service and other things, having an empty paint can in your garage where you can leave a little bit of a message that says, here's where we went to grandma's house, is much better than spray painting on your garage door, evacuated or gone, because we don't want to signal looters and things of that nature. So a small message area within or in your garage or around your home is a really good way to be able to communicate with people. And you can drill that on a monthly basis. You can tell your family, hey, I'm going to leave candy in our message center area sometime this month. And if people check for it, they may get a treat. I want you to have extended family communication plans. So involve your family members that are in other states or outside of your immediate family. How are you going to communicate with them? Who's your contact point? Does that contact point know that they're the contact point and that they should be taking notes and recording dates and times and locations of everyone to keep everyone in the loop for a major event? Other thing I want you to create is actually an assigned walking route. Now, we did this with my kids and our family and my husband of all ages. This is not just for kids who are within walking distance of a school. It is anybody that may not be able to use their vehicle to get home. And this is what I'm talking about. It looks something like this. For instance, I had teenagers that attended a charter school that was a couple miles away. And when we determined our plan, and they had emergency packs in their vehicles and they knew some of the responses for after action, but what we discussed was if they were capable and not injured, that it was okay for them to try to get home by walking if they needed to. However, they had an assigned route. They couldn't just wander however they wanted to get home. Now, they may need to divert from that path a little bit if there's damage that they have to get around, but we also had communicated, you start on that route and you stick to it as best you can. The reason for that is that we may need to locate each other. So let's say I am a stay-at-home mom and I'm at home and there's a horrible earthquake and there are gas lines ruptured and somebody knocks on my door and says, we are evacuating your neighborhood. What do you do if you know that those teenagers are headed to your house and are walking to you? You need to know what route they're on, because then when you evacuate, you could take that same route and try to locate them on the way. My husband is in a lot of different places when he works around town as a technician, and he's everywhere. So his route is a little trickier. We've identified routes that maybe will have less liquefaction and less traffic congestion, or if he has to walk topographically. But he's going to make his way to their route as well. And we're going to try to find each other. More information is better than none. Now, even little kids from elementary schools that typically you walk and you escort them each way. If they have a route that you've walked on family nights several times and they have a little map in their backpack, they could also do the same thing. And this can help just a child that gets lost. If you walk that route with them many times, it can really increase communications. Now, what I've done, this is a paper that you're looking at that I put in their emergency packs, because sometimes you just don't really know what your response can be. And when it comes to communication, I really want those kids to know if they end up in a shelter and they have phone lines set up at that shelter. Look, now I have printed phone numbers, right? This is now the day and age where we don't have everybody's phone number memorized. Back when I was in high school, you got everybody's phone number memorized. Now I don't know if I could tell you my daughter's phone number. That's so sad. But I have everything printed on these papers so that they can try to make communication. This is of course fake. This is not my mom and dad's phone number, but this is a good sample of what could be in their little backpacks folded up. And I'll also tell them, here's your first meeting place. Try to go home first. If you can't go to that, here's where we decided our second meeting place would be, or our third. Depending on the age of your child, an assigned walking route can be something that really helps you find each other after an event. Now let's go into that. Let's say you have a small child. So many times we don't talk about disasters with kids because we are afraid of scaring them, right? We don't want to overwhelm them. We want them to live in this bubble and we want them to feel safe, as they should. But I got to tell you, they're already pretty familiar with disaster, right? They're seeing these kinds of disasters all the time. The reason that this doesn't freak them out, first of all, is because it's not happening to them. Some are more aware than others of the nature of acting in these movies, and they know it's not happening to them. So here's what my recommendation is to you, that you do talk about what you feel they can handle for a disaster. You're their parent for a reason, their grandparent and their aunt and uncle, but you can figure this out. So my number one tip is, first of all, preserve the bubble. We don't wreck the bubble. We don't come at them saying, you know what, your house could be destroyed tomorrow. Not going to wreck that bubble. That's not for them. One of my very favorite phrases, quotes, is from Mr. Rogers, and it's there on the right, that he says, when I was a boy and I would see scary things in the world, my mother would say, look for the helpers. You'll always find people who are helping. So what we're going to do is we'll transition and make this about service. If you're watching a movie and something like that gets destroyed, something happens, there's an earthquake, there's a car wreck, pause it just for a second and ask, guys, wow, that's a lot of damage that just happened. Is there anything we could do to be prepared to help those people? Is there anything we could have in our car that would help those people? Is there anything we could have in our emergency packs to be able to help that situation? So you can talk about earthquake, you can talk about flooding, you can talk about car accidents and things of that nature, but you talk about it as, how do we help someone who's experienced that? And then you get them involved. So some of the activities that I believe are essential for and appropriate for young people, the safety phrases, right? The stop, drop, and roll, the drop, cover, and hold on, turn around, don't drown. All of those things are really handy for a child, and repetition is really good for them. Teach your youngest children the safety phrases. It's amazing, and will help you as you respond to things too, because we go back to the animal brain when something really scary is happening, and you'll remember those safety phrases. So that is an excellent place to start with those kids. All children should understand fire escapes for their home, and you can set that up however you want, but you need to talk to them about, if you can't get out this way, is there another way you could get out? So fire escapes are a good way, and practicing getting down low and go and those types of things. The required walking routes. Even my elementary school kids have required walking routes when they were coming home from school, or if they like to walk home from church, here's the route that we take so I can always find you. Your emergency packs, I'm skipping one, sorry, emergency packs. Some of you, we haven't done, at first I didn't do emergency packs for my little kids. I was like, they're too heavy, they're not gonna wanna carry a backpack, I'm not gonna do that. We need to empower those children to feel confident in any disaster scenario. So my recommendation is everyone in your family has an emergency pack, even if it's a little Batman tool belt. I don't care if all that they have in their pack are socks and stickers that they could give to other kids. We're going to empower them to carry what they're capable of and help people. And then you build that and you add to it when you think they can handle more weight, and you go from there. But even the youngest, if let's say you're holding that child's hand and you're going into a shelter, if that child has talked about this situation before and has their pack with them and knows they're going to look for maybe a kid that needs a sticker from them, it gives them more power in a situation where there's not a lot of power for that child to go into that environment. So I highly recommend emergency packs for even the youngest of us. The other thing is the furniture safety. Do a furniture safety scavenger hunt around your house with your youngest children. Let's protect baby sister from any furniture that could fall on her. Can we find it? Who can find it? Let's do it and get it secured. Those are conversations that are perfectly acceptable to have with young children, and get them involved in the planning so that they feel that they can respond. Now let's talk about youth. Right? Our youth, I am a huge proponent of our youth. I love a youth that'll sign up for a CERT class or first aid class. They're strong, they're fast, they are really capable. But what we're going to do is change it, right? They've grown up now from a young age talking about serving other people, and we're going to give them a little more responsibility. We're going to make it about protection. They need to help us protect our family. I believe, I love this quote, the function of parenthood is to produce more leaders, not more followers. And so often we expect our teenagers to, memorize our instructions and follow them. And we repeat it and we repeat it and we hope that they do it. But really, we need to convey to those youth that they may need to act on their own, right? We need them to take charge. If they're babysitting, if they're alone, if they're injured, we need them to step up and have the confidence to say, I know how to do this. And rote memorization is rarely the way to do that. Now, you're their parent for a reason, and you know what they can handle, what may cause anxiety. But I would like to say that most of the time, it's fear of the unknown that causes anxiety. And if you have talked scenarios through with them on a regular basis, it's no longer the unknown. And so you can help with that anxiety. As a parent of a child who does have minor anxiety, we had talked through so many times, and it becomes we quiz all the time. What are you going to do? Did you see that injury? How would you treat that? That person was shot in that movie. What do you do? That's in the core of their body. How do we help them right then, that first aid, so that they can act immediately? I'll tell you a personal experience I had was my daughters were in a really horrific accident. And that's hard as a parent, that you're not there. You always think, I'm going to be there to walk them through this and help them through this. And they were new drivers, and they had friends in the car, and they got into a horrific car accident. And there was, this was not too far from my home. And it was a lot of chaos when this really bad accident. We're talking like 4 fire trucks and multiple police cars and some pretty significant stuff that happened. But I'll tell you what, I was so proud of my daughters that they stopped. So one of the girls that was in the accident, she cut her eye above her eyebrow and on her eyelid significantly. It was bleeding significantly. Now, let me tell you what, I should backtrack a little bit. When the accident first happened, a really cool citizen behind them, a man, a father, saw it, right? And he jumps into action, but he had no idea how to respond. He didn't know what to do, right? And he gets there, and this young 15-year-old girl is stumbling around the car, bleeding profusely. And she starts to lay down on the ground. And he grabbed her. That was his instinct, was don't let her lay down. So he got behind her and kind of propped her up while she sat there, but wouldn't let her lay down. However, the other girls, as they got out of the car and kind of got their wits about them, they saw that she was bleeding significantly. And my other 15-year-old daughter ran up to her and said, okay, It's not spurting. We're okay. It's not anything that is, she knew that there were 3 different types of bleeding, right? There was venous bleeding and oozing bleeding and spurting, because we talked about it. And she went, I think we're okay. It's not spurting, but it's going into your eyes, and we gotta put pressure on this right now. And another girl ran and grabbed a sweatshirt, and they were putting pressure on her head, and she wasn't a great victim, because she was like, that hurts, get it off my head, don't do it. But they were handling it. And she's talking to 911 on the phone, and they're calling parents. And the man, the great guy who was there helping, he's like, I've never seen anything like that. It was a 15-year-old kid taking charge of this accident. And it was because, even though she suffered from anxiety, we had talked about the plan. We had talked about first aid. We had talked about how to stop bleeding. And this, you know, we were lucky that this was 2 minutes away and that the fire trucks were there so quickly and help was there so quickly. But what if they had been in a more rural setting where they had to act? We need those young people to be leaders, not followers, not do rote memorization. So we need them to jump into action. So what are some of the things that youth activities that would be good for youth? Let's see. First of all, what to do after an event, just like we discussed. You know, are you comfortable with them walking home from their after school job, or do you want them to shelter in place and you're going to try to get to them, or do you want them to go to a nearby shelter? You need to talk about how far away that is and what their response could be. They should also have required walking routes. How are they going to get home from that place, and which route are they going to take so that you could possibly locate them? Primary, secondary, and tertiary meeting places are really important to set up, because plan A never works. I got to tell you, the first plan of attack is always wrong. I would encourage them to do stop the bleed classes and CERT training. If you have a kid that's at least over 12, sign up for a CERT class together as a family. There's much of that class is online now, and you can do that together. Involve them. It's actually really fun to strap mom to a backer board. I'm sorry, it's funny, it's ridiculous, but it builds their confidence. And I highly recommend that they get CERT trained as well as you. Involved in your food storage. You know, for a while it was just me, the mom and the dad, buying food and organizing them and cleaning, and I got a little overwhelmed with how I was tracking my inventory and how I was replenishing and all of those things. And when I got my daughters involved, they got me hooked up with all kinds of really neat apps and things that would, you know, scan my barcodes and tell me where it was on sale nearby. And we got them all involved, and suddenly became a really fun project as a family. And they're smart and they're good at those types of things. Make them vested in your food storage. Of course, you can build their emergency packs to be a little bit larger so that they could have more of a shelter away pack, as well as, you know, your 72-hour supply. So build that to within their capabilities. The other thing I would teach your youth that are capable of understanding the responsibility of the shutoffs of your home is actually how to use them. You and a lot of spouses and adults don't know how to do this in your home. So you need to learn how to do this. And I would teach your older youth, how do you shut off the water inside and outside of your home? If there's simply, your disaster could be flooding inside your house. Does your youth that's babysitting know how to shut that water off, and also know that they never touch it unless they have to? Have they been trained with gas shut off? Do they know how to turn the power on and off if a breaker breaks? Make sure you're their parent, you know if they're capable of handling that, but having those conversations could really make the difference with your youth feeling confident and capable when something very scary is happening to them. I'd like to move on now. Another group of individuals in our families that sometimes we overlook when we're planning is actually, oh, I skipped one, I'm so sorry. Self-defense. This is one of my favorite things to do with your youth when they're at a certain age, because most likely the disaster that your young people could face is a bad date, a walk across a college parking lot. And so from a young age, or from when you think that they're capable, you can do self-defense classes. They can do them, or you can do them with them. I took one with my daughter. One of my very favorite things to promote is the Gracie Academy. It's a jiu-jitsu class where only women take it. And I took it with my teenage daughters. And it was amazing. It was a good workout. It was once a week for a couple of hours. We bonded together as women, and we built our confidence in our strength and our capabilities. I love it. Highly recommended that your youth should have some self-defense capabilities. Okay, So now the next part of our plan and our big family picture and our neighbors and things of that nature is how do you plan for disaster for aging individuals? Sometimes we skip this on our plan, and that can cause a lot of heartache and stress during an event. So here's what I want you to think. First of all, this is going to switch. If you have, let's say, someone who is on their own in their home and maybe won't have the capabilities to do a lot after an event, or they may be living in an assisted living type of facility, your plans are going to change. Instead of having, you can talk to them, and you should, about what they're going to do after an event, but it really needs to be, what are you going to do after that event? How are you going to get to that individual? Maybe it's not you personally. Maybe you talk to your entire extended family and say, how are all of us going to get to that individual? Who's closest? Who may be best set up? And what's our game plan for getting to that person after an event to make sure they're taken care of? Have we talked to one of their neighbors to make sure that they'll take care of them until you can take care of them? Whatever that plan needs to really be customized to, how are you going to take care of that person after the event and get to them? So one thing that I want you to look at again is routes to their home or their living facilities. Depending on how far away they are, you may need to consider liquefaction in the area, bridges. Do you have to cross large east to west in the Salt Lake Valley? It's going to be significantly an issue to go east to west. So if that's going to be a struggle for you, is there somebody else that's already east or already west with them? But you need to talk about those routes. How are you going to get to that person? What if you have to do it on foot, and how will you do that? Now, I want you to have conversations, especially when they're in an assisted living facility. I want you to talk to that facility. I want you to thoroughly understand what their response plans will be. Because if their response plan is to evacuate to a certain area or shelter or use this, then you need to know that that's where you're headed versus to the actual facility. And sometimes those facilities will tell you, we don't actually have a plan for that type of evacuation. And that will guide your plan based on their plan. So I want you to talk to them. What's that facility's plans after a major earthquake or a disaster? What are their backup power capabilities? If you have a member of your family that's on medical equipment that requires power, what is that assisted facility's backup power capabilities? How long can they go? What do they need? What support would they need to keep that power going? So often we hear in the news, in flooding and hurricanes and tornadoes, facilities that weren't checked on for a very long time because people didn't understand that they weren't capable and that they didn't evacuate. So that needs to be part of your family's plans. I want you to talk to them about what their response will be afterwards, how they will take care of your family member, what are their backup power capabilities, and their evacuation plans. So these are something that I really want you to think about when you're doing your family's immediate plans. With that, I think that we can, if we have any questions, I'm happy to move on to questions, but I firmly believe that any conversations that happen now, they're going to save a lot of time and chaos in an emergency. And there's a lot you can do to talk to your family about those events to make them feel confident in their own abilities to respond and help them feel that they can deal with it, that they can do this. And my daughter once said to me, "Man, we've never had a disaster." And I kind of laughed because we've had so many, but the reason that she felt that way was because they didn't feel like disasters. We always knew what we should do next. And that is how you prevent them feeling that they don't have any control in that disaster. So with that, that's everything I have. Ken, are you with me?
I am with you. And Kathryn, you knocked it out of the park again, as you always do. Great, great lessons on conversations and disaster. We have a couple of questions.
Great.
And so I'm going to start with the first one. And the question is, Kathryn, are you a ham radio operator?
You know, I do not have my ham radio license. I have a call sign because at Summit County, as the emergency manager, I am a responder. So I use our 800 megahertz and our VHF radios, and my family is trained, but that's the next level. I need to get that ham radio license because when all else fails, a ham will work. And what a fun project. I think what a fun project for your family to do that together, to understand that your youth can get those licenses. In fact, it's kind of a dying art. I would love my daughters. I would love, the youth in my community to get together and learn. It's basically about etiquette, right? The right terminology, and you're not allowed to talk inappropriately on those radios, and people are listening, and you have to introduce yourself with your call sign. That type of stuff, man, I think would be amazingly beneficial to families and youth, and I fully intend to do it soon.
All right, good answer. This is a comment more than a question, but you were talking about messages, you know, do you leave to your family? This is the comment. Try to remember to put the date and time of your message in the text, so a proper timeline can be followed of notices or actions. Message delivery timestamps don't always reflect the message was sent if service is spotty or overloaded. So that was just a comment.
That is a great comment. They're right, because if it has been 18 hours since you left that comment, things could have changed, or that message. So timestamp it and let them know we evacuated to Aunt Lula's house at 5:01. Like, that's a great comment. I totally agree.
This one kind of applies to Jeff's comment, but it was made during your presentation. How do we find out if liquefaction is an issue in our area?
Well, that's a good question. We have Utah liquefaction maps, and I bet John or Kathy Holder or Be Ready Utah would be a great source to find liquefaction maps. But that has been mapped in our state. Basically, the rule of thumb is if it's a high water table, you're going to see a good amount of liquefaction. So if you're crossing riverbeds or areas like that, or there's marshy areas, you can almost count on that's going to be a high liquefaction area. But there are official Utah liquefaction maps, and I would highly recommend you research them along with topographical maps to see what your best routes are.
And I want to sneak in here for just a quick sec on that, Kathy. I would say most of you can actually go to your communities. I know Davis County, where I live, and Layton City, they have on their website a place where I can go look at, am I in a liquefaction zone? Am I in a special flood hazard area? And what type of soil do I have? Because they link into all the different state agencies to find those things.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kathy. Now I could be wrong, but I think that Google Maps may have a layer you can add for flood. Kathy, does that sound familiar, that you can click flood layers on Google Maps?
It used to be that way. They've taken that away unless it's come back recently.
Okay.
But as far as maps, they can always, for flood maps, they can always go to msc.fema.gov. I'll put that in the room for everybody to look at.
Wonderful. Yeah, I highly encourage you to be aware when you are doing your routes and things like that. Know where that's going to be worse. It's not going to be ideal, and your plans have to be flexible and able to change and reroute. But if you start with a good route that considers those high water tables and liquefaction areas, you'll be just one step ahead.
Very good. This is another earthquake related question. I think what he's mentioning is standing in a doorway a good thing to do during an earthquake. What's your feeling about that, Kathryn?
Good question. I actually don't recommend a doorway. And the reason for that is that if there's a door in that doorway and they're shaking, the doors swing, they slam, right? And there's lots of crushed fingers and issues we have with slamming doors when a house is shaking. A lot of times people think, well, the doorway is the strongest part of the wall, but it's not necessarily. If you're on an interior doorway that's not a load-bearing wall, that's not necessarily the greatest place to be. So I am a big fan of drop, cover, and hold on, just like Marilyn and John and Jeff and everybody's been telling us. Get under a table and hold on to it. Get under something so that if anything falls on you, it can. You know that the triangle of life was actually established by other countries that don't have our same building codes, where they build cement, unreinforced masonry type structures. They don't use rebar in the cement. And when the shaking happens, they will have their levels of the building flat, right? They just pancake flatten. And so that was established because they were afraid that when all those levels come crashing down and you're under a table, that won't work. So people will tell you run to the wall, and they're hoping for a void to be created when the wall falls to be safe, but you're still guessing. We don't have construction typically like that in the United States, so our homes won't collapse in that way. So your table, your structure, your desk is the best place for you to get under there and hold on, so that you don't have anything fall on you or have doors slamming on your hands? Really good question.
Another great answer, and that kind of coincides with what Jeff said as well. So you're right on. Last question. How do you get a ham radio license?
Oh boy, this is really going to put me to the test. I believe we have to go to the communications authorities for the state, right? Ken, can you help us elaborate on that? Do you need to go to UCA or can you go, is it the federal FCC?
I am a ham, KD7YIY. It's pretty easy to get a ham radio license. There are amateur radio clubs in almost every community. I know I live in Sandy, and if you go to the Sandy Amateur Radio Club and just Google that, you'll find out information about how to get a license. You can actually go online and just Google ham radio license. You can even prepare for the test online. You do have to take a test in order to, and there are different levels of ham radio licenses and so forth, but you don't have to know Morse code anymore, which is a good thing. I guess it's a good thing. A lot of people like to know Morse code, but at any rate, I'll answer that question for you. You can easily just Google how to get a ham radio license, and the computer will tell you.
There you go. I love it. Google. And there are even apps out there that will help you study, as far as I understand, for your ham radio license and the tests and all those things.
Yep, that's true.
Great.
Well, that concludes the questions, and we still have some time left for, I think, a commercial or two. So, Kathy, I'll turn it back over to you. And Kathryn McMullin, thank you again for your wonderful presentation, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Bye, guys. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Kathryn and Ken. Appreciate that. Great information. Good discussions there. Yes, Kathy Holder, I guess we are entering a break now for looks like close to 20 minutes. I think we should probably stay on schedule rather than starting early. But we do have a couple of, yes?
Could we ask the people who have joined us, since you asked them to list where they're from, if they joined us after the first session, if they could just type in the question box where they're located? We'd love to know that. City and state, if possible.
Absolutely. So I think everybody heard that probably from Marilyn. If you wouldn't mind, yes. And also, if you wouldn't mind, also in there, if you were new and didn't respond to our poll, enter in how you heard about the Be Ready Utah webinar, whether it was through email, social media, word of mouth, and I don't remember what the other answer was, but how did you find out about this webinar? Yeah, Facebook, word of mouth, website, email, or other. If you wouldn't mind putting that in there as well. Again, we have one more session left that begins at 4 o'clock in just over 10 minutes. Water storage. And yeah, please come back, take a break if you need to, use the restroom and whatnot, and we'll be back here at 4 o'clock to have a great presentation by Brian Stinson on water storage. And we have on the screen for your enjoyment some of our Be Ready Utah memes. Only you know your own needs. Personalize your emergency kits or disaster supply kits. You know, depending on what list you use, you can find lists everywhere to assemble a disaster supply kit on Be Ready Utah's website, FEMA's website, American Red Cross website. Whatever list you use, just personalize it. If there's something that you need to be happy, healthy, comfortable every day, put some of it in your kit. It's kind of what we say there. And then and do that same thing for everyone in your family, so that everyone has their own personalized disaster supply kit. I believe, Kathy Holder, that we do have a Be Ready Utah video. Do you have one of those ready, maybe? We could play that at this time.
Hey, I've got a new bill if you want to trade.
Hey, sure, thanks.
All right. Let's see. Library card, chicken takeout, ice card.
Ice card? What's that?
Oh, sorry, ICE, ICE, in case of emergency. It's a card I keep in my wallet with important phone numbers. That way, if my phone doesn't work or I'm injured, someone else can contact my emergency numbers.
Huh.
I should do that.
This is a photocopy.
Yeah, okay, and this is another meme created by our very own Brian Stinson. You can see here on the screen with me. What's in your disaster supply kit? Kind of goes along the lines of what we just talked about a minute ago about personalizing your kits. Finding a good list of items, and we shared a copy of our Be Ready Utah disaster supply kit list yesterday during this webinar, and you can find that again on bereadyutah.gov on the homepage. The far right side of the page is the popular downloads column, and you can go there and see all of our great emergency preparedness information brochures, including disaster supply kit, and that list is broken down into the 12 areas of preparedness as well. Kind of helps you make sure that you have items in your kit to cover all 12 areas of emergency preparedness.
You know, Wade,
Anything you
one
want to
question I get, yeah, I was going to say one question I get with what's in your disaster supply kit is, hey, does everybody in my family need to have their own separate disaster supply kit? And of course, well, not of course, because they ask it, but the answer to that is yes. Everybody needs to have their own separate kit because everybody has their own personal needs. Everybody, mom has different needs than dad, has different needs from little Bobby and little Jill. Some people might have some access and functional needs that they might have. So yes, everybody has special or specific needs that they have. And so everybody's kit is going to be unique to them. And I think about, well, what about the people like, okay, I've got an infant or a small child, they can't carry their own kit with them, so it'd be just easier to put all their stuff in my kit. But that's not really the best way of thinking as well. They should have their own separate kit that goes with them wherever they go. So like baby Jane, perhaps, maybe she would have her own kit, and it needs to be like a souped up diaper bag or something like that would be her disaster supply kit. So if she goes somewhere, that kit always goes with her, and you don't have to be rifling through mom's or dad's kits to pull out those things. Same thing if you have pets. Pets need to have their own disaster supply kits as well. So that's, and the other question is, or the other thought along with that is, if dad's carrying everybody's things, what if dad gets separated from the rest of the family? Then nobody has anything. So everybody should have the basics of survival as much as they can carry in their own kits. And you know, some things like maybe a tent, that's something that maybe dad can carry, but you know, everybody should have like ponchos or sleeping bags of their own.
Well, and
Right, okay.
oh, sorry, I just noticed somebody in the room said something, or in the question answer room said they can't carry enough to do that. And one thing that I've done for some of my family members who can't necessarily carry the items, maybe they're a little more elderly or they have some other disabilities or issues, and we've actually made rolling bags for them. And one of the individuals has a wagon that they have sitting in the garage with their stuff in it. So if they needed to roll their wagon, they could do that.
Kathy, if you want to go back to the previous slide that you just had.
This one, or?
Yeah, that one right there. If you can even see that, that's a wheeled backpack. I mean, you can find all sorts of different kinds of backpacks online or wherever you go, but that's a very good thing. Some people can't carry that kind of weight on their back, but they still need to be mobile. And you mentioned having a wagon, something like that. That's a great way of doing it. Some other ways I've heard people doing it, if they have just a standard backpack, you can purchase luggage luggage dollies that you just bungee cord your bag to some wheels. But whether it's on your back or you're dragging it behind you, your kit does need to be portable. And maybe if your kit's too big, you might want to consider condensing it down to the very basics so that you don't have too much stuff. This is not meant to be a month's worth of supply and living in luxury. This is the basics for some comfort, and it's for survival.
Right, thank you. Okay, and Kathy, let's go to the next one that you had up there. It was about volunteering. We just talked about that briefly, and then, and let's see, we still have about 9 minutes before the top of the hour. Prepare yourself now so you can help others later. Yeah, one of the things I'd like to mention about this is one of the things I talk about in our outreach efforts, outreach presentations, is who's responsible for our safety. You know, ultimately we are, right, ourselves. And there's a lot of resources out there that can help us: Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Red Cross, National Guard, your church, so on and so on. But the government, ultimately, we are responsible for our own safety. And so, again, going along the lines of only you know your own needs, personalize your emergency kits. But as far as, you know, we need to prepare ourselves first. And then we can be better able to help our neighbors, our friends, you know, if you're a block captain or whatever in your area, better able to provide the assistance that other people might need if you are prepared yourself. Brian, anything else you wanted to add about that preparedness meme? I'm sorry, the other one.
This is one that goes a little bit more along with what you were just talking about.
Oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Sorry, my computer is doing some weird stuff right now, so.
It's all
That's
good.
okay.
We appreciate all you're doing, Kathy. Yeah, well, our responsibility, or our preparedness, is our responsibility, especially in a disaster situation like Jeff was talking about in his presentation. It can be a long time before help comes to you. There was one guy, I was teaching a class one time, and there was a gentleman that was affiliated with one of the disaster response organizations, and he said, our organization is going to be there within a couple of hours. And I thought, well, that's great, but think about large scale disaster, and you're not going to be able to get, one organization's not going to be able to get to everybody in a community, in a city, in a county, if there's a large scale disaster. So that comes down to us as individuals taking care of our own needs, taking care of our family's needs. And then after we've taken care of those, then we're able to go out and help specifically the neighbors right around us. And after we've taken care of them, then maybe we go and respond in our communities, whether if you're familiar with CERT, Community Emergency Response Team, either an organized organization like that, or meet together in faith-based groups and neighborhood groups. And those things are best to be organized before the disaster hits. But yeah, it's our personal responsibility. We can't blame it on anybody else. If something happens, we've got to be able to take care of ourselves.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I make a comment as well?
Go ahead, Marilyn. Yeah.
When we're thinking about these disaster supply kits or whatever, one of the things that's really important to consider is, do you have your financial information with you in some portable method of carrying it with you? Because if you were not able to go back into your home, would you be able to take care of your financial affairs? Would you know about your insurance coverage? Would you have information about your bank accounts? Do you have some cash with you? In small denominations, especially, because if the power is out and you're trying to handle a transaction to buy some goods that might be available in the store, but you can't process a debit card or a credit card, then it would be important for you to have cash that would be in small enough denominations that you could pay for the item without having to pay a lot of money for the item because they couldn't make change, or because you know, they couldn't handle the transaction for you. So those are some things that are really important. But if you really need to have your financial affairs considered as you prepare to evacuate.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Marilyn, as well. Good advice there. And I also wanted to pass on, information from Marilyn Hoff, the earthquake lady that was just on a previous session. Don't forget an emergency kit for your pets as well, in case you have to evacuate or leave the area or whatever. And then, yeah, she's reinforcing what Marilyn Albertson just said, have all your financial information on a flash drive. Okay, I just want to make a couple quick comments here and recognize some long distance participants we have. We have a couple people on, one from Rigby, Idaho, that has joined us today. Welcome, and also someone from Las Vegas, Nevada. So we appreciate our long distance viewers here today, as well as a lot of people here along the Wasatch Front from Utah County and Davis up to Weber County, and then down through central and southern Utah as well. So we appreciate everybody that's joined us here.